Right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. What a bombshell announcement. What a day. What a strange moment in SA Rugby with Springbok head coach Jacques Nienaber officially confirming that he will depart the side post the 2023 Rugby World Cup. I don't think this is something too many people saw being announced today, put it that way. I think, we were always very curious and very sort of sketchy about whether he was going to stay on past the World Cup. I don't think any of us thought that this was going to be a decision that was going to be made before the World Cup had even started, because it has been something that has been so hotly contested that I think we kind of expected, Jacques Nienaber to get to the World Cup and the decision to be then made post the World Cup, depending on how the World Cup itself actually went. So this is definitely a bombshell and definitely something that's taken a lot of us by surprise. Certainly taken me by surprise. Not something we expected to be seeing today. And it's going to be interesting to see what the reaction is, because I think a lot of people will be quite happy with the announcement. I think some people will, be quite upset about the announcement, stuff like that. So I'm very interested to see what the reaction is going to be from sort of the various schools of thought and different types of fans and stuff like that. I think at the end of the day, it's a very big loss for SA Rugby. Now, that doesn't mean I think that he should have gotten an automatic contract renewal. He should have continued to be the Springbok head coach. But there is no doubt that he has done some very, very good work at the helm of the Springboks and with the Springboks over the last 5 years almost since they've been involved. It is about 5 years. There's no doubt that he's made a big difference. And there's no doubt that, the systems currently being put in place in the Springboks and the whole sort of environment has been a big improvement from the predecessors. At the end of the day, we were always going to have to judge him after the World Cup, weren't we? Because he's had a very up and down tenure. His win percentage, for example, is not particularly good. And yet he's gotten a British and Irish Lions series. And yet he's beaten New Zealand, for example. He has and came up just short of beating the number one side in the world, Ireland, in Ireland, and probably should have beaten France in France. So, we go into the World Cup still as one of the favourites, and there's been nothing under his tenure to suggest anything else, really. He currently sits with a win percentage of 61.4%, which is not ideal. We would like that number to be a bit higher. But he's also now working with a team where he didn't have an entire year of international rugby with the side to sort of take the next step post 2019. Remember 2020, the Springboks didn't play a single game, and that I think has had a big effect on the preparations for this World Cup, which is why we saw, for example, all those changes against Wales last year, and we've seen quite a lot of different changes, and at the same time, maybe not as many changes we'd like within the Springbok system. But be that as it may, to see him leave and go to Leinster is a big loss to South African rugby. Regardless of whether you wanted him to stay on, whether you race him or not, it's a big loss for SA Rugby. Because he's now going to be adding value into Ireland rugby. That's the reality, and he's got a lot of value to add. There's no doubt about that. I think it would have been so good to see, even if he didn't stay on as the Springbok coach, for him to stay within South Africa and been involved in sort of the South African structures a little bit more. That would have been an ideal situation. That's not going to happen. And it shows you just how much ambition Leinster currently have. And I'll tell you what, that Leinster coaching staff, that whole Leinster rugby system at the moment, I mean, they must be absolutely through the roof with how things are currently going at that union. You've got a side which is basically the number one side in the world in terms of having about 90% of the Irish national side in your setup. You've got a whole bunch of Irish under 20 youngsters coming through. Your systems are incredible. You're losing Stuart Lancaster as a coach, and you're replacing him with a World Cup winning coach in the form of Jacques Nienaber, who's one of the top defensive coaches in the world. I think Leinster are prepping themselves to become one of the biggest powerhouses rugby's ever seen over the next few years. I genuinely do. I think that you look at what they're doing, you look at some of the decisions they're making, and it's difficult to see how any other team, especially in the URC, for example, is going to compete with the likes of a Leinster. How are they going to compete? How are they going to start sort of catching up to Leinster? I struggle to see how they're going to be able to do it. because Leinster are just making so many good decisions and so many not resting in their laurels. I think is the big thing. They didn't win last year, and their response is to go and recruit a World Cup winning coach to replace Stuart Lancaster, and then to say, cool, we're backing our coach at the moment, and we're going to keep improving. Yes, we didn't win a trophy last season. They're still in for the double potentially this season, both the Heineken Cup and URC. I think they're still favourites for both of those competitions. But yeah, it's an interesting decision. And now we go into the very funny situation of who's going to replace him. So yeah, to answer your question, he will be leaving after the World Cup, so he's still there for the World Cup, so we don't need to panic about that. But that's the poll I want to do. And the poll I want to question is who should replace Jacques Nienaber. And I want some options here, people. I'm going to put John Dobson in. And I'm going to put in Johan Ackerman, because those are some of the names being thrown around. Anybody else that we could throw into the mix and into the poll? Franco Smith, I don't think would be the worst shot. I'll tell you what, he's playing some pretty good rugby over there. There's Dieter Stick. I'm going to actually put him there because he's very much being groomed as a potential future head coach. But I'm going to put those three options out there. I'm going to put those three options. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. We're going to have a lot of time to speak about this, by the way, throughout the rest of the year. We're going to have plenty of time to chat about the replacement for Jacques Nienaber and sort of where we should be going, how we should be replacing him. And for me, the biggest sort of thing now is Rassie Erasmus. And at this stage, SA Rugby have come out and said that Rassie Erasmus is under contract. He will not be leaving SA Rugby until 2025 at the earliest. That has been reaffirmed, as I said, in that statement. So at this stage, you don't have to worry about him leaving. But I think it's very important that we do need to keep him, in and around the system for the next couple of years to make sure that whoever the next coach is going to be backed with the right sort of decisions. And I think what's so important is that whoever the next coach is, that they receive the proper backing and that they get the right coaches around him. Because I think that's what we sort of learned over the last 5 years is that, Rassie Erasmus came with Jacques Nienaber. It was very much you need both of us. And then he went and found the right sort of players, the right sort of coaches around him to sort of tick certain boxes. And as a coaching staff, Matty Proudfoot jumping in there, back in the World Cup winning one, Felix Jones coming in. You look at what the work that Alan Walters did, that was kind of the World Cup winning combination, as well as backing on Dieter Stick. So it's not just a case of finding the right head coach, it's finding the right coaching staff. How do we find the right coaching team, the right sort of group of people to take us forward? And I'm waiting for some people to sit there saying, "Oh, we've lost out on Razor and stuff like that." I don't think we're actually ready for a foreign coach. To be honest, I think it's very difficult for any foreign coach to succeed in South Africa because you don't understand the intricacies of South African rugby or South African politics, which does play a role of sort of how things work in South Africa. I think you need to have a very innate understanding of the rugby landscape in this country to be able to be a successful national coach. And that's why I don't think we're ready yet for a potential foreign coach. And I don't think we're not going to get one, I don't think either. So, yeah, but as I said, the good news is that, as I said, at this stage, SA Rugby have confirmed that Rassie Erasmus is not going anywhere, that he will be remaining at in his role as Director of Rugby for the next 2 years at least. Kind of sort of implying that they would probably like to renew it if things are going well. But it is interesting that they did reaffirm that part. It was over here. It said, we will confirm a successor in the title role of Springbok coach in due course. That planning will go on in the background, but Rassie Erasmus' service are locked into the end of 2025 at the very least. So the fact that they have emphasized that, I think, is a very big sort of statement of he's not going anywhere. We need to make sure he stays here. Because Felix Jones has left, we lost Alan Walters after the World Cup, and now we're losing Jacques Nienaber. So I think it is quite important that they do emphasize the fact that the other coaches aren't going anywhere yet. There is still going to be a bit of continuity, because you don't just want to press restart every single time. You don't want to just reinvent the wheel all the time. Just regardless of how the World Cup goes at the end of the year, I don't think we're in a crisis situation where you have to press reset. I'll be very surprised. If we go out in the group stage, we don't win a single game. Sure, you can talk about maybe a reset, but I do think that there has been quite a nice journey from a lot of these players coming through to building the sort of Springbok brands, building this team. And there's some nice sort of players coming through. Kane Moody, Kirk Lawrence, Damian Willemse, Ruan O'Keefe getting an opportunity, Ulrich Lowe, Evan Ruiz. These are all players who are going to come through and play for many years ahead. Andre Pollard is still pretty young. Kanya Ams can still play for quite a few years. There's not too many players who are playing their last World Cup here. So I think continuity will be very important. And that's why I think that choosing the right sort of coaches and coaching staff will be vital, because I don't want to press reset. I don't want to bring in somebody with a completely new philosophy, completely new plan, and we sort of throw out half the team, bring in a new side, and we kind of build from the ground up, and we kind of know it for a couple of years. Maybe it does work, maybe it does, but I do think that if there is a certain amount of continuity, I think that keeps us at a high level, and will make us more competitive during those non-World Cup years, which is something we've always been kind of criticized about. We've always been known as a team that can win a World Cup, but don't compete in between. Tim van den Berg saying massive coup for Leinster, for Rassie's until 2025, but I wonder about head coach prospects post World Cup. Then saying, I wish Joey Mangala was given more chances as the Sharks URC defense coach. Have to wonder where this development is being started at the Currie Cup level. Definitely a coach of national interest, in my opinion. We actually had this conversation last night when I was looking at the pretty poor Sharks defense, and people are saying, is he not better coaching a URC defense rather than coaching a Currie Cup team? And it's difficult to know what the right answer is. And he's a very talented coach, Joey Mangala. He's very much in demand. The Sharks were very chuffed to be able to get him in. I think the Bulls were very sad to lose him, and the Bulls' defense has not been good this season, so they've definitely missed him. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if there's a right answer though towards whether being a head coach for a Currie Cup side versus being the defense coach at the URC level, which one is better. But it's interesting to see. I mean, for example, Jacques Nienaber apparently is being targeted by a Japanese side as a head coach role, but he's someone who, if he can get right, the Lions' defense has definitely improved this season. They definitely have poor moments, but I do think that he's had quite a good impact on the side, so he could potentially also be a coach, as I said, of national interest. John Dobson obviously is doing some really good work at Stormers. In fact, all the Stormers coaches are doing some good work down in the Western Cape. So be interested to see how any of those sort of move, and whether you see some of those sort of coaches take the next step as well. Felix saying Bok coach will be a 10-year job forever and ever. Let him go and build the muscles. Well, that's the next thing, isn't it? Are we and be interested to sort of see the process. Are you now appointing a head coach for the next 4-year cycle? Is that is kind of the standard thing, and it's quite a standard thing across all sort of unions and nations. They kind of go on World Cup cycles. And if you have a good World Cup cycle, you get renewed for another World Cup cycle. If you have a bad World Cup cycle, you get the World Cup as your sort of saving grace, and if you can't turn things around by then you get axed. Kind of how it's always sort of been. Obviously, that's not always the case. Sometimes, coaches do get sacked in between World Cup cycles. We saw that happening with Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus coming in 2018 to replace Tutti. We've seen that now Eddie Jones getting the sack. We've seen Warren Gatton being appointed back at Wales. So when people are getting the sack there, so it's not a perfect science, but that is generally what's happened from a Springbok point of view. Not too many coaches have been sacked in between sort of World Cup cycles. But we've now basically got a year to sort of decide where we want to go. But I suppose the good thing is that we know that we have to make a decision, and we're not sitting there resting on the World Cup before making that decision. We're not sitting there going, oh, well, if the World Cup goes well, then we'll want to try and lock down Jacques Nienaber. But if it doesn't go well, then we need to try and look to replace him. And how long do we wait until we start looking? Now we know from the get-go we need to replace him. We need a new coach, and we can start the process quite early and start looking at a long-term view. Who's our best coach to take us from now until 2027? That'll be, that's the next World Cup year, and you can even start having these conversations. I mean, I don't think there'll be an announcement like they've done with Scott Robertson, but for example, you actually could have the announcement done beforehand, because it's not like a Ian Foster situation where the man actually would quite like the job and didn't want to walk away from it, hadn't made any commitments, and they really started looking for a new coach. We've now seen Jacques Nienaber leave the Springboks, and all of a sudden now you've got that year to make a decision and stuff. But I do not think we'll be going for Aston Coetzee. Felix says Nienaber would make a great Wallabies coach too. Tian saying a good domestic coach may also not make for a good national coach. You have to work your game plan around available players. Wayne Peebeck was a very good coach, but was undone by this quirk in Wales. Coetzee is doing the business in Namibia. We'll have to see what he can produce in Paris, but not for the box. The breakdown saying maybe Jimmy Stonehouse will get the job locally. It's only him and Dobson who look worth anything. I don't think we're going to see Jimmy Stonehouse go from the Pumas to the national job. Maybe brought in as part of the setup. You know, for example, if you want to bring in Jimmy Stonehouse as an attack coach, I'm all for that. But for someone who's got no URC experience, for example, hasn't got a Currie Cup experience at a big union, I don't think they're going to go with them. But I wouldn't mind him being part of the setup. John Dobson's an interesting one, isn't he? Because he is the big name that you're going to throw around now at the moment as the best performing domestic coach. And there's no doubt that he has done phenomenal things down in Stormers. But international rugby is a whole different thing. The style of rugby, the conditions, how you play the game is so different. And you don't want to sit there saying that you can't, John Dobson can't produce as a Bok coach, because you'll never know until he gets the opportunity. But again, it's not an exact science. Just because you're doing well in the URC doesn't mean you'll do well in the national setup. So it's got there's a lot that needs to be ironed out. And as I said, I'm very interested to see what sort of direction they go. And I think what I was saying earlier in the show is that for me, it's 50% about the head coach, 50% about who they pair him up with. Johan Ackerman's currently coaching in Japan. He was coaching a second division side. I think he actually might still be coaching a second division side. He's another name that always comes up. Obviously, he's actually, I think, leading the poll at the moment. But he's also sort of, I went to Gloucester, had a mixed bag over there, and we would like to have seen him. It would have been cool to have seen him go to stay in a Premiership job, or go to a URC, or go to a top 14 club and stuff. He's kind of, for me, his coaching sort of career has taken a bit of a halt, I think, in Japan. I don't think he's really taken the strides forward. He's only good money, but if he has national ambitions, I'd like to see him coming back to this side, or just coming back to sort of mainstream rugby. And not that Japan is the mainstream rugby, but it's just we don't really pay much attention to it. I don't think Rassie Erasmus rates particularly highly, as we've always continued to say. Unless you're already in the box squad, you don't get picked out of the top 14. If you're playing over in Japan, you kind of have to already be playing for the Springboks and then go there to be able to continue to be picked. So, I don't think that he's going to get too far if he continues to ply his trade in Japan. But we're going to wrap it up there. I just wanted to jump on and get a bit of a chat going, see what everybody sort of has to say. We've got a poll running. In that poll, 39 people have voted. And at this stage, the chat's preference will be to have Johan Ackerman as coach. John Dobson coming just short on Dieter Stick with 50% of the votes. I do think John Dieter Stick has definitely been groomed towards becoming a head coach in the future. So I'll be interested to see if they do go that route. Again, I don't mind him going that route. Just make sure he's well supported. Make sure they've got the right people around him. But just to finish up, going through some of the comments, JD Quinn saying Rassie is the head coach, not Nienaber is really assistant coach. No, Rassie is the director of rugby. Those are the official roles. JP says, I think if it was going to be Stick, they would have announced that already. No, I don't think so at all, to be honest. This is still very breaking news in terms of the announcement from Jacques Nienaber. Leinster only made the announcement, I think, less than an hour ago, or about an hour ago. So it's obviously still very new. There's plenty of time for these announcements to happen. It was announced, 2 o'clock, so just over an hour ago. So we're going to wrap it up there. Reason's putting his hand up for consideration. So if we want to see somebody have a worse percentage than us to consider, then Reza is available. We'll send your CV off to Rassie, and hopefully we can get some exclusive content if you do get the job. But until then, people, I'm going to see you guys in about half an hour on the Lions versus Leinster stream. Thank you very much for jumping on and being part of the chat quickly. It's just nice to sort of get some feedback and see what everybody has to say about the whole situation. If you're watching this back, chuck your comments in the comments. And I will see you guys on the Lions versus Leinster stream. That'll go, it's already live, so this will redirect you there. And we will see you guys for some live coverage at about 10 to 4 o'clock. It's Lions versus Leinster. 6:15, it is Stormers versus Munster. And I will be with you guys for all of those games. So come and keep me company. Please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. I need 4 more subscribers so that I can start the Lions versus Leinster game with 24,000